Hi, welcome to Middle East in Crisis. I'm your host, Neslihan Erishkin, and today we'll be talking about where is the Middle East. So, you might get pictures and images from newsreel media playing in your head of like where you think the Middle East is and what it's like, or you might be thinking back to your high school geography teachers showing you a picture of and pointing with it, being like, this is the Middle East. Now we're going to completely forget what countries are in there and move back on to Europe. Maybe she brushed to Africa. Why did I think it's a she? It could be a he. They might have rushed on to Africa or Asia, completely forgetting geography. But today we'll be talking about the Middle East. So where is the Middle East? Some people may be looking at that. The narrow strip of land from Qatar, no, not Qatar, thinking of like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, like that strip of land, like Israel, Jordan, that kind of region. Or you might be thinking of North Africa, which that would be MENA, Middle East and North Africa, Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia would be like the main countries in that region. You might be adding Turkey in the Anatolian Peninsula. Along with it, you might be adding Iraq. So this region kind of ebbs and flows of like what countries are in it. There's some cores of it of like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, those Arab countries. But then that brings on the question of like, what countries are Arab countries? Like, what is the expanse of it? What constitutes as an Arab country? Is it language? Is it culture? Is it ethnicity? And is it by self-identification? Is it based off of treaties? It poses a broad question of where is the Middle East, and is it Arab? Does it include non-Arabs? Because if you include, say, the Middle East is Arab countries, then that wouldn't include Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Israel. It would not include a lot of countries that we have sometimes deemed as the Middle East. And so also when I'm talking about Israel, I also forgot to include Israel along with West Bank and Gaza Strip. We can't forget about the Palestinians. And so what do we constitute as the Middle East? And has it always been this borderland? Like, has it always been these countries? And the answer simply is no. Like many things in history, you ask a simple answer, and the answer is usually not ask a simple answer. Ask for a simple answer and ask a simple question and just want like a little, like, I don't know. The answer is usually no. Nothing is simple. We're humans. And history is just the story of humans. So you could also think about the Middle East as the Islamic world. Sometimes we talk about the Islamic world and we conflate it with the Middle East. But then we completely forgetting about Southeast Asia and those regions, and forgetting other Muslim populace, we would be forgetting about Central Asia, which I call Central Asia the stand countries. Besides Pakistan and Afghanistan, I think that's a whole different group. But back to the Middle East, so what constitutes it and how it has evolved throughout the ages. I like to go back to the beginning of Islam. I mean, you could go back farther. Like, I remember when I took a class called Ancient Israel, and we were mapping out different regions and what is now like that coastal, like Levant area in Egypt. We had a map quiz, and it was terrifying. And so, well, we're not going back to like Canaan territory. We're just going to start back to the beginning of Islam or we would be here all day. So Islam at the beginning was just the Middle East and like Saudi Arabia, because that's where, not Saudi Arabia. Saudi is the name of the kingdom of Arabia. So I'll be calling it Arabia. So Arabia at the time was constituted of a bunch of tribes living in little cities, and they were traveling back and forth, doing trades. There was a booming economy, and so that's what it was constituted of. There were warlords and smaller kingdoms, but there wasn't really anything. I mean, there was like the Persian Empire, but they weren't really around at this time. I mean, their power was like dwindled. I mean, there was a Persian Empire. There has always pretty much been a Persian Empire. But so in Arabia itself and most of the Middle East, it was just various like caravans going back and forth. And caravans does not always mean camels. And so out of this, we had the birth of Islam, which created a new kingdom of sorts. We have the Rashidid Caliphs, which were the first 5 caliphs of Islam, who banded together and spread the religion, and they had a kind of a nation-building question, and so they expanded the religion and made a bureaucracy of ruling this territory too, and making almost like a new dynasty of caliphs. And so there was the fraction of Ali. I'll go on to that in a later video, but that pretty much just split up the Sunni and the Shia. I will be following the Sunni route. I'll make another video on Shia Islam. But so they had the Umayyads, and they made their own kingdoms and caliphs. And then there was the Mongol invasion, which disrupted everything, and the introduction of Turkic tribes coming in the area trying to escape the Mongols and starting their own communities and entering in. And so now we're starting to expand what we think of as the Islamic world in the Middle East, and forming what we know as the Middle East today, starting from like Mecca and Medina in Saudi Arabia, and it's blooming out. And from there, and so with that, there was a period of just instability. There wasn't really much leadership. There wasn't really like there were boundaries, but there weren't like set boundaries as we think of them today. I mean, there weren't really like set boundaries of what the Middle East is until like the Ottoman Empire, when there was like a true like leader in the region. I mean, there was the Mongols, but that's a whole nother story. So I'm going to jump to the Ottomans. And so they ruled the Middle East up until World War I, and then, I mean, they were like fracturing off before World War I. Like, they were definitely diminishing. And so, and then after the Ottoman Empire broke up, so you could say the Middle East up until that point was the Ottoman Empire. So that was like the Middle East was the Ottoman Empire. And then that got broken up because of the British after the Ottoman Empire fell. And that's how we got the modern borders. So as you can see in this very rough retelling of Middle Eastern history and the borders, that there wasn't a distinct region of what the Middle East is. At one point, it was the Umayyads, and you could even say the Persians, but that's a whole nother category. You could talk about the development of the Ottoman Empire as the Middle East, and then the fracturing up as the Ottoman Empire, and their former territories as the Middle East. But there wasn't really this idea that the Middle East has always been this unit is not true. There was never really a Middle Eastern unit. There were just other territories or other kingdoms who took over this territory. And you could try to say that, oh, it's the stretches of Islam. And I was like, well, the stretches of Islam at what time? Because, like, Islam went into Spain and starting going into France before they got pushed back back to North Africa. So this idea that the Middle East is one homogenous is a complete lie, because every single one of the countries I listed at the beginning has its own unique culture, and they themselves may not even believe that they're a part of the Middle East. And so we have to think about it maybe not as a unit, but maybe, I mean, we could look at it as a unit like we do like Europe, but we always split up Europe by the countries. Like, we don't talk about, like, I mean, you could take a European history class, but when you do, you'll see, like, the unit on France and Germany and Spain. But we need to give the Middle East that due respect of, like, you can take a Middle Eastern history course, but we also need to fraction it up, being like, the culture and the history in Egypt is going to be really different than Saudi Arabia and Jordan and all these different countries, and realize that borders are flexible, and depending on what century you're talking about, the Middle East, the size and the shape and the countries and the cultures that were incorporated in the Middle East are very different. So that is my rant about what is the Middle East and where it is. Until the next video.